After about 2 years of use and 10,000 kilometers of riding, the front derailleur cable on this bike is just about to break. In this video, I'll show you what's involved in replacing that cable, what tools you need, what supplies you need, and what skills are involved. Let's get started with the exact model of the derailleur, which is printed there. It's really difficult to see, but it's right there. You can see that the cable is frayed and parts of the wires in the cable strand, individual wires, are broken off. So this is not normal that, I don't know, about 10 of these wires are broken and the rest of them are still somewhat in place. I don't know, maybe 4 pieces of wires that are holding it together and maybe 15 of them broken. Something like that would be the idea. And the cable broke here where only a few pieces of wire held it together. So the replacement cable right here cost me $5. Let's take out this bit. The top of the cable is held like so with this plastic fitting and gets undone by loosening that cable clamp bolt with a 4mm Allen key or hex key. So removing the cable is this straightforward. Note that this is also how the cable is going to be clamped back in place. So the new cable will lie flat here underneath the washer of this bolt and then curled back up and wrapped around itself. Obviously I want to save this plastic fitting, but so I'm not going to throw it away. I want to also save this rubber tiny fitting here. I want to cut this mangled end of the cable off because I want to pull out the rest of the cable where it laces in. So through that plastic component there, which will then wind its way around the bottom bracket there. It's running here inside and eventually it's going to come out at the shifter here. So I'm going to pull it out from here, so I don't want to drag the broken end through every single tight junction, turn and plastic fitting. I don't want to scratch and damage the plastic fittings. So removing the damaged cable is fairly straightforward. Peel back the rubber grip on the shifter, looking something like this, and the cable's end is visible there. This is where the new cable's end, shaped similarly, is gonna go back in place. On this side of the shifter, there's this plastic viewing window here that can be picked out like so. And once you get a hold of this cable, it just simply withdraws in the direction that it went in. There. So that's the end I just cut off. Nothing much to see. And now the other end. The cable here at the other end will come out when the derailleur is shifted in this relaxed position. So this is how the old cable comes out. This is the Teflon coating on it that failed over time at sections where it's subject to severe bending, which is not most of the length, as you can see, but especially bad somewhere here. You can see the first 8 inches or so. That's where most of the banding is done on this cable, so most of the peeling on the coating is done. So lacing in or placing the new cable is fairly straightforward. Just open up the bundle like so. I've got the anchor end, and this is an uncoated, I think, stainless steel cable. Standard cable from any bike shop. So this is where it is going through. You have to find the point where the cable goes through, and you just have to pull it through. Make sure that at the shifter here, the cable's end goes into the socket that it's provided for. There, and it's firmly seated. You're gonna have to do this, check it several times during assembly, especially before final tensioning, when it's laced in all the way through the twists and turns. The cable's end then needs to be fed in on this side through that tiny hole in that fitting there, and hopefully it comes out at the cable tension adjuster here, which used to be connected up to this cable guide, and this piece of fitting that I'm going to show you is just fell off of here. So let me pull out the cable, making sure that there is no knot on it when it's done. Just cleaning the lint out from the system. It's always a good idea. There, and at this point I'm pulling on the cable and checking it on the other side that its end down here is still properly in place, which looks like it is. This stretch of the cable guide is soaking up the oil. I removed the cable, I put in 20 drops of oil, and so it's been soaking overnight, and lubricated the cable itself and laced it in again. So that's doing its magic there. And over here we have this fine cable adjuster. That's kind of how it came off, and I'm just gripping it with the pliers just barely. So this is how it works. It will elongate as the cable is being tightened, so you have to set it back to 0. But before I do that, I want to lubricate it. So resetting means shortening it, and yes, there's excess lubricant everywhere on it, and that's good, and that's what you want there. The other side is just spinning like so, so it's just running free, it's doing nothing. And this side is threaded, so it's being shortened. Nice. You wipe off the excess lubricant. Lubricant is relatively cheap, and if there isn't enough of it in your components, then that's an ouchie. So it gets placed like this, there, and from here it elongates because it's friction fit, and it doesn't bind with the cable guide but fits snugly. And the second stretch of the cable guide also needs cleaning, because it's likely to be full of the shed Teflon fluff. Drops of lubricants going in of this just oil. So I've placed the cable guide on the cable, and right about now is a good idea to do cable management, however you want to run your cables, which one on top of which one. I'm gonna run mine here, and right now we have a fluff situation. I think Teflon fluff danger, yeah, that one. So the cables, and yeah, maybe I'm gonna grab a needle for that, but the cable guides end needs to be seated there, and I need to get that crud out of the way, definitely. And there we have it. So that's the shed Teflon layer that comes off the old cable. So the new one just runs in this sleeve that's inside the frame, hopefully on its own without any problem. Winds around the, nope, it does not. Winds around the bottom bracket. Nope, it gets stuck there. And I'm bringing out more fluff. Interesting. More cleanup. So the cable made it this far and then it gets stuck there, so we need to help it. And that's done at the bottom bracket here. Need to remove this one screw here. This half of this 2-component plastic grommet should come out fairly easily, like so, having no cable on it. And might as well just clean this length here. So that's the component that I've removed. And now that it's not taking a severe bend, shifter cable should make it down here unassisted or without any further problems. But there is a little bit of a problem here. The cable made it down here, but it has to go through this because there is a break in the sleeve. So I'm gonna try to marry the two of them together. So the break in the cable's sleeve is right there, and if I can just hold them together, or twist them together or something in the right direction, and then advance the cable in this position, I can hopefully keep the cable inside this guide. Yeah, I had to cut up the cable a little bit lengthwise, just on one side, trying to work out this crud from it. Did I tell you I hate Teflon coating? Yeah, more cutting and more crud cleaning. And there we have it. So besides the dirt that falls in from the open end of this tube, I went with the paper clip, which I kind of bent straight or folded straight, whatever. And this is what's clogging the Teflon coating from the previous cable. That's clogging my progress here. Now, I don't know if yours is gonna be this miserable, but just get ready. And there we have it. What a hacking misery. So the cable is through it, you can just barely see it. It came out at this end, and there, it's time to make sure that it is coming in here correctly. Just the cable guides end there needs a snap fit like that, and this fine adjuster needs to properly close, but that needs a bit of a shortening on the cable. I'm pulling on the cable with my other hand here. So this is a little bit of an angle, but it will work. It's time to place the cable grommet correctly. So this is how it goes when the bike is orientated like this. But before I can snap it back in place, I need to run the cable through to the other side through a tiny hole. Yeah, the tiny hole through the frame there. That's where I need to come out with my cable, which is on this side of the frame. So all I need is 2-3 hours and I should be done. Hopefully not, because that's gonna make me apoplectic. And there you can see the tiny hole and the cable running through it. So now I can snap the grommet back in place, which is fairly straightforward. But I, of course, do want to end up with the cable sleeve there, coming out on the other side just like this. and being able to move it back and forth so it's not binding. Nice. Next thing to do is making sure the cable is actually free and without any twists or tangles. So I'm gonna pull it on this side. That's right. After all the misery I went through at the bottom bracket, I want to make sure that the cable is actually moving through the system smoothly, as smoothly as it can. And now that I'm happy, I put it back where it should be. There, properly anchored as per previous video footage. I'm gonna fold this back so it doesn't stretch out, you know, I don't know, a few hours time or whatever, excessively. So I pull the cable apart here because, and you can see, I can see it's running through smoothly. So I want to put a whole lot of oil in here that trickles down all the way down, and I want to put a whole bunch of oil in here from the upper end as well, and leave it overnight so it all distributes through the system. I'm not being too conservative here with lubricant, and neither will I be with cleanup, because where you see oil, that's also where rain can also collect and will trickle in. So I'm not trying to remove all the excess oil. I want to leave some on purposefully. Over here though, I'm trying not to fill the frame with excess lubricant running down the cable's guide or sleeve there. So I'm placing this rag there very intentionally. Now, if the lubricant from the now broken and also cut open cable guide runs out at the bottom bracket and drips on the floor, so be it. I'll take that risk. I want to be lubricating this cable excessively, slightly, and running it in by moving the cable like so. Alright, while that's soaking, time to place the final few components. This is the upper end, this is the lower end. That's supposed to hug the end of the cable guide. And yes, before I took it apart, it was out of place and it wasn't doing its job. That is sealing that hole and preventing the tear and the cut and this filling with dirt. So that goes that way. And the cable's place runs here behind this hook, up and over here and underneath this biggie washer. So that's what I'm looking at from above. Again, there's the cable and the guide, the washer. Cable goes underneath, thereabouts, and pull it straight through. Lubricate all the pivot points on the derailleur, both sides, everywhere. As I tighten this bolt, I want to point out that the tightening rotation loosens, so I'm pulling it tight here, and it's counter rotating like so, so that loosens, is tightening, loosens the cable. That's why you have the cable tension adjuster, this fine adjuster here in the system, so you can tighten the cable here to counter the effect of this little bit of loosening effect. I got one last note about properly pre-tensioning this cable, because the fine adjuster between the cable guides will only do you so much. So take a look at that white line on the derailleur's body there, and the second white line thereabouts in front of my nail. So I'm gonna just finger shift like so and try to line up those two lines. So this is the position for the derailleur that lines up the chain for the smaller chain ring, and I'm just lifting it up to line up with the larger chain ring. and all of these rags that I have that protect the camera from getting greasy or in the way, but this is just for filming. So I would need to loosen the clamp bolt like so, lift up on this derailleur to some degree, pull on the cable and tighten it somewhere here, pull the cable tight, then tighten the bolt in this position roughly. So this way the cable is gonna be tighter than what you can do with just trying to pull it tight in this position where the derailleur is unloaded and springs back to line up with the smaller chainring. And don't forget to put the screw back into the grommet. This screw doesn't really have a tightening torque. Obviously metal screw going into plastic component, don't over tighten it. There, I can see the lubricant is weeping through. That's good, that's what I want. Nice, I want to know that there's lubricant everywhere. And from here on, all I need to do is wind the cable around when cut it at whatever length, and put this piece of plastic on as well, and I'm gonna reuse this fitting. I'm just gonna open it up with a piece of nail that fits through it and hammer it in. So the cable runs through most of this clamp washer there, close as possible to the shank of the bolt, and this is how the fitting, this plastic fitting, is oriented with this square corner ending up there at this corner here when the center pivot point is in place, and just wherever this cable relaxes, kind of somewhere there, I'm gonna cut it thereabouts. And good to go for the cables and grommet or end cap. And let's see what we did. Does it fit all the way? Let's give it a try. Oh yeah, very nice. Just need to crimp it and we are done.